Well, I'll just go ahead and get started because we have two wonderful presentations. So welcome again, everyone, to webinar number 4 of our series with the International Oak Society and Global Conservation Consortium for Oak. We have amazing institutional members supporting institutional members and standard institutional members that we want to recognize for their support of the International Oak Society. So thank you all. And then, yeah, just a few reminders before we get into it to please make sure you stay muted while our presenters are talking. There will be designated questions following the presentation. So Roderick and my colleague Kate Good at the Morton Arboretum, they will facilitate that. So they'll ask for people to unmute and ask questions, or you can put them in the chat while the presenters are speaking, and they'll make sure to cover each question that comes up. And then, yeah, following the two presentations, I think we'll have time for some short discussion that Roderick will facilitate as well. But I will pass it off now to Roderick Cameron to do a short introduction. So, Roger.
Thank you, Amy. For those who don't know me, I'm Roderick Cameron. I'm president of the IOS at the moment. Great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. Thank you to the Global Conservation Consortium for Oaks who co-host these series with us. And I'd like to explicitly thank our sponsors, supporting sponsors, Denver Botanic Gardens and the Morton Arboretum, especially in this case as they're actually hosting our webinars, and also our other institutional members, the Bartlett Tree Experts, Forest Keeling Nursery, Houston Botanic Garden, John Ferry Garden, and San Antonio Botanical Garden. If any of you are involved with institutions and you'd like to support us in this way, please get in touch with us. We're looking for new institutional members, and this is a new membership type that has worked very well, and very pleased to get that going. Also to remind you that our fundraising campaign for the Oak Conservation and Research Fund is in full swing. You may have seen the Oak Leaf fundraising thermometer on the homepage of our website. And today's first presentation will actually describe a project that was in part financed by this fund, so please consider contributing to it. All contributions are welcome, and our aim is that our whole community of oak enthusiasts can participate in this campaign at any level. You can contribute through our website using a credit card via PayPal, but if you prefer another method, just get in touch with us at webinars@internationaloaksociety.org. Perhaps, Amy, you could put that email in the chat. You can use that to contact us with any feedback you might have on this webinar. So a special thank you to our presenters today. Dr. Min Deng has been a member for over a decade and presented at our conferences as well. But we're delighted to welcome Min's student, Luting Liu, who will be presenting their conservation project involving Quercus marlipoensis. I'd also like to thank our friends at Chevithorne Barton, James MacEwen and Greg Watson, who are presenting in the second part of the webinar. The IOS has a long relationship with Chevithorne Barton since the early days when Michael Heathcote Amory first started this outstanding collection. So it is very gratifying to be able to feature this collection in our webinar. A lot of time and effort goes into preparing these presentations, and of course we depend on willing presenters to be able to hold these events. So thank you to all four. I'd also like to invite anyone here who would like to present at our webinars to get in touch with us. We usually feature a science-based presentation combined with one that shares an oak collection, but we would be open to any oak-related topic you wish to present on. And we're also looking for someone to report on this webinar for our website and newsletter. We of course share the recording with all our members, and bear in mind you can look at recordings of previous webinars on our website under events. But we also like to publish a short account of the webinar so that readers can have an idea of the content. Writing one of these brief reports will give you an opportunity to review the presentations and get more out of them, so it is certainly a worthwhile endeavor. Write to us again at webinars@internationaloaksociety.org if you'd like to be involved. I think that is all I had to say. Bear in mind, our events will start kicking off. We got events in the UK and in France in June. And there's some really good tours in the US, in California and in the Carolinas, led by Sean Hogan and Adam Black. And I think those will be really interesting. So do check them out and sign up for them if you can participate. So I suggest we get started with the good stuff. Back to you, Amy, and I think we can start with our first presentation. Thank you.
Yep, sounds great. Thank you so much for that, Roderick. And yes, I just want that following the talk, Roderick and my colleague Kate Good at the Morton Arboretum will be facilitating the Q&A discussion and wrap up. So thank you both again for handling that. But yeah, I will stop sharing, and I'm very excited to pass it off to Dr. Min Deng and Luting Liu for our first presentation on Quercus marlipoensis.
You need to,
thanks for the introduction, Roger and Amy. And thanks for the International Oak Society provide us the opportunity to share our research programs on Quercus marlipoensis conservation on the Mainz weber. My name is Min Deng from Yunnan University. Actually, this conservation project deeply rooted in 20 years ago when I was a PhD candidate in Kunming Institute of Botany. At that time, we're trying to harvest the acorns of Quercus marlipoensis. And it's a very remote area between the boundary of China and Vietnam limestone area, and also a lot of termites under the ground. So it's very dangerous. And my colleagues and I take like a week trip walking in the National Nature Reserve and eventually found 6 individuals. At that time, we realized this species is just so rare. And in the following years, we take few trips to trying to get the individual numbers of this species. So still less than 15 at that time individuals we found. So it's a very endangered species. And later, under the help of Dr. Andrew Heap, we reconstruct the phylogenetic tree of section Quercus ilex, and we realized that Quercus marlipoensis actually is very close to Quercus andreana. And when we dig deeper, we found that there's a more complex of the genetic of the Quercus marlipoensis. So at that time, Luting Liu began to join my research team. Luting Liu gets the bachelor degree in Nanjing University 2021. And at the same year, he go to the Yunnan University for the PhD candidate program and began to carry on the Quercus marlipoensis. So I will handle the rest part to Luting, please. Okay, sure.
Slides look great.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Luting Liu, PhD student from Yunnan University in China. I'm presenting on the topic research progress on Quercus marlipoensis conservation. Section ilex within Quercus is disjunct distributed in the Euro-Asian subtropic regions and adaptable to diverse habitats. It can be divided into 6 clades, and Quercus marlipoensis live in 5th lineage. Like other oaks, Quercus marlipoensis is a tall tree with green-brown bark. The new branch is covered in yellow fuzz. Its catkins and the carpel covering 1/3 of acorn. The leaves have no sharp teeth. It's 2 years to mature for acorn. The flowering period is from April to May, and the fruiting period is in second year September to October. The mature acorns show high ratio of animal predation and with a masting cycle. It's endemic to Southeast Yunnan province in China. Only one population ever found in habitat. The population has been found regeneration difficulty. So the red list oaks classifies this species as critically endangered. Habitat of Quercus marlipoensis is tropical mountain cloud forests. This habitat is unique narrow altitudinal belt in Middle Highland, characterized by warm and high humidity and consistent cloud over. The tropic mountain cloud forest in Marlipo Canton is typically limestone area. In current year, warm and dry of climate in southwest China and Indochina, and more frequent climate extremes. So led to habitat degradation. Meanwhile, this region in Indian monsoon with warm raining season and mild dry season. In flowering period, humidity is not comfortable to pollen dispersal, and in fruiting period, drought season and limestone area are leading to seed germination and seedling establishment difficult. Furthermore, the Quercus angryana is sister groups with marlipoensis, but our results show that Quercus marlipoensis clustered into Quercus angryana, but their leaves morphology show great difference. So the question arises, is Quercus marlipoensis an evolutionary significant unit? So we need more evidence to support the systematic status of Quercus marlipoensis. So based on this concern, we have three questions. Firstly, we resolve the evolutionary background to identify is Quercus marlipoensis an evolutionary significant unit. And second, we explore pollen storage techniques to preserve germplasm. Due to identify the key factors on regenerations, we conducted seed germination and seedling establishment for ex situ conservations. And then the first result is about evolutionary background. So we collected populations of Quercus marlipoensis and related species to resolve it. We can see this map. The green point is Quercus angryana, and the red point is one population of marlipoensis. The pink and blue points are populations of Tomaensis and Consciensis. The yellow point is Quercus tartacaensis. it just has one individual. So we employed the morphometrics method and to analyze the leaf shape, and the results show that species identification analysis separated Quercus marlipoensis from other 3 related species. And we use nuclear DNA of the whole genome resequences to analyze phylogenetic relationship. The results show that 4 main clades corresponding to 4 taxa, Quercus marlipoensis and Quercus marlipoensis cluster in one clade. This clade is sister group Quercus marlipoensis and Quercus angryana. Quercus marlipoensis clustered 1 lineages, forming to it has an evolutionary significant unit. And within the Quercus angryana, we found that 3 main clades corresponding to geographical distributions. Clade 1 is southeast branch of Quercus angryana, and clade 2 is the central branch. The clade 3 is the west branch. The west branch is a sister group with clade 1 and clade 2. Quercus tartacaensis clustered into southeast branch of Quercus angryana. So, systematic status of this complex, we can find Quercus tomensis is an endangered species, and Quercus consciensis names should be reinstated. Quercus marlipoensis is a critically endangered species. The Quercus tartacaensis is maybe a same species with angryana. So population cluster result that the delta K will invite population to 3 groups. In this map, the blue is southeast branch of Quercus angryana. The yellow is the central branch of angryana. Quercus tomensis and consciensis is red one, and the west of angryana and Quercus marlipoensis shows a combination of 3 genetic components. This data indicate that ancient interspecific gene flow might be involved in speciation of multiple complex. So the second result is pollen storage. We're gathering the fresh twigs with catkins and waiting for the pollen grains to release. Then gathering the pollen grains. We divide pollen into 100 equal parts in different tubes. And according to Q seed bank, we put this pollen on lithium coloring these solutions. So when this pollen dried, we can put them stored at different temperatures. The stored pollen was regularly taken out, and after rewarding, the pollen variability were taken on solid media. So our results show that pollen-based long-term storage coordinations is -20 degrees at at 15% relative humidity. In seed germination, Quercus marlipoensis is typically apical dormancy, and the germination increased when removing part of pericarp and cotyledon, like this. The seed has high germination ratio at 15 to 30 degrees and were able to germinate in lower temperature at 5 to 10 degrees. Germination rate declines as water potential decreases. These results show that it's typically recalcitrant and sensitive to soil water loss. And then the germinated seeds were planted on greenhouse. The seedling grows better in deep container and high humidity. So we summarize our results. Firstly, Quercus marlipoensis represent a distinct evolutionary significant unit and show unique genetic combination of Quercus angryana and consciensis and tonmiensis. The ancient interspecific gene flow might be involved in its speciations. Pollen-based storage coordinations is -20 degrees at 15% relative humidity. The seed is sensitive to water loss and show typically apical dormancy, and it has faster germination ratio at 15 to 13 degrees, and it tolerates mid-high animal predation. High humidity environment is essential for seedling establishment. So in the future, we will explore cryopreservation of pollen grains in liquid nitrogen and micropropagation and cryopreservation on apiculture. The seedling has been distributed to the Kunming Institute of Botany, the Xishuangbanna Tropic Botanical Garden, and the Yunnan Academy of Forestry and Grassland Science. And we will share the seedling to more institutions and botanical garden. And we will cooperate with the Laojunshan National Nature Reserve to in situ reintroduction. So, we will monitor reintroduction and habitat in cooperation with the other conservation stations in multiple counties. Furthermore, based on our evolutionary results, there are a lot of gene flow in complex. So we explore the roles of gene flow, climatic, and geographical factors contributed to the divergence pattern of complex. And based on our data, we found that the significant physiologic difference of the 4 species on safe. So we explore the stress-resistant genes of the Quercus complex for further germplasm improvement. Thanks to this webinar, give me a chance to sharing my work. And special thanks to Oak Conservation and Research Fund to support, and Mr. Roderick for helping on sampling Quercus tatacensis from Taiwan. This sampling filled our gap in Taiwan, but it is not enough for expand our results. So we seek more cooperation to sampling this. This study supported with multiple institutions and organizations. We also thanks our research teams for helping on sampling. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luting and Min. That was fantastic. I do appreciate the thanks for supplying Quercus tatacensis, but I'm not sure I don't regret it now that you're saying it's a synonym.
Sorry for that.
I think we have some questions in the chat. Kate, could you read us those?
Sure. We've got 2 questions. Feel free to add more if you have another question in the chat, or to unmute yourself. But first question, are there hybrids known between marlipoensis and Angleriana functionensis? They are not sympatric?
That's a very good question. Because I think it's not the current gene flow, but should be the historic gene flow involved. Currently, we only analyze the nuclear DNA data, but I think we really need to look at the core plus DNA to look at the pattern and probably the network evolution involved on the speciation of this species, the marlipoensis, I mean. Need further study.
Okay, thank you. And then another question is, how many seedlings were reintroduced in situ, and is there a monitoring in place for these seedlings?
And currently, in our greenhouse, we have like 1,000 seedlings already propagated, and we already distribute 100 to the Kunming Institute of Botany and another 100 to the XTPG already. So I think this summer we're trying to go to the marlipoensis, go to the orchid conservation station, because their site exactly the location of the Quercus marlipoensis located. So we're trying to plant another 100 seedlings there, and we hired a forest guide to monitor the habitats for us, and the student will visit the station regularly, like twice a month, to monitor the seedling growth.
Great. Thank you. Are there any more questions for Luting or Min? That's all I have in the chat.
I have a question. going back to when you were distinguishing Quercus marlipoensis from Quercus engleriana, did I understand correctly that it was actually more important the differences in the leaf shape? That's what helped you distinguish it, even more important than the genetic differences?
It's a very good question because the leaf morphology of marlipoensis vary a lot. At the seedlings, usually it do not have the trichons on the back of the leaves, but when it grows older, it covers by the dense trichons on the back of the leaves, and the leaf become the teeth will become entire leaf margin when it become adult trees. But at the seedling stage, it looks like the two species are very similar.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you, Min. Any further questions for Luting and Min? We've got one in the chat. Dirk is asking, do the individuals in situ appear healthy?
It has some disease that like the white powder on the leaves. It's kind of a fungi, and very easy to infect the young seedlings, and very difficult to get rid of. The white ash spread on the leaves, and it's very difficult to get rid of. Even with sprayed a lot of chemicals, it's still very difficult to kill the fungi.
You see that in situ and ex situ, or is it easier to control in your garden?
Not in situ. In situ, usually in the habitats we can detect, but not as that bad as ex situ.
Okay.
So I think probably because in the greenhouse, the airflow is not very strong. So maybe it's need more airflow in the greenhouse, I think. Maybe to the open space will be better.
Right. Yeah, Ben is saying this sounds like what we call powdery mildew, which we also find often on Quercus roba.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ben is saying that we all struggle, yes, with powdery mildew, and he does as well in the humid environment in Houston. So, yeah, it's I think something we've all encountered. Any other questions? And we can move on to the next presentation. Good. Well, thank you very much, Min and Luting. I found that particularly fascinating. Can we go now to Greg? Would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, you're good to go, Greg. Thank you. We see your slides, and
There we go.
Okay.
Yep, now we're good.
Yeah, let's go.
Location.
I'll introduce myself first. So, my name's Greg. I'm the head gardener at Chevithorne Barton. So I'm going to be talking today about the future of the garden and collection. And
my name's James, and I've been around for a very long time. And I've been involved with the collection for 20, 30 years plus. So we'll look forward to trying to show you the collection. And first of all, we're starting where it is. It's situated in mid-Devon, southwest England, and the garden sits on the southwest slope with an elevation between 100 meters, 200 meters in height. In other words, it's 328 feet to 656 feet, roughly. It's around 35 to 39 inches of rain per year. Judging in the last few weeks here, it's probably about twice that. But anyway, we've been flooded out nearly. The soil is made of deep red loam with a neutral slight acid, and probably more acid in certain areas. and we can grow rhododendrons, camellias very easily. The warm season is between June to September, and the daily average high is above 18 degrees. The cool season, November to March, daily average high of 10 degrees. Our coldest month is February, average low 2 degrees, and the average high of 8 degrees. Now, occasionally we have seriously bad winters. At the moment, 2022, it went down to -8. 2008, 2009 was the last very severe winters, and where we lost many Mexican oaks, including the UK champion Calophylla. Now, one of the biggest problems was a very early frost in October, and the sap was still up, and the base of quite a number of Mexican oaks exploded because they were young trees and the Pachydermatous bark was still firmly in place, and it killed our magnificent crassifolia, Calophylla, sorry, that was the champion tree in England. The start of the collection. This is a photograph of Michael Heathcote Amery, and he was inherited his house and estate from his grandmother in May in 1966. Her husband was killed in the First World War, and all three sons, including Michael's father, Gerald, were killed in the Second World War. Michael inherited Chevithorne Barton at the age of 25 in 1966. To begin with, Michael did not venture beyond the grey gates at the end of the terrace garden. He was too busy building his extraordinary successful career and looking after his son. When he was married to Arabella in 1975, she persuaded him to go beyond the gates and expand the garden. Michael, one of his great talents was getting very good at getting good advice and collecting knowledge people around him. And with some hesitation, he started his oak collection. Firstly, he had to discover what species he had in the garden. This amounted to an area of some 4 hectares, 12.3 acres, originally under the expert knowledge of Roy Jin. Having retired, Roy came out of retirement to help Michael. Roy Jin introduced the first germinating system for acorns at Chevithorne, which was to hang them in paper bags on the walls of the summer house at the top of the terrace. This was surprisingly successful. Michael, returning from a business trip to China, brought back a terracotta warrior, seen in the photograph. This was placed in an area known as the Walnut Orchard, but housing some of the most special oaks. Arabella remarked to Roy Jin, "Did a terracotta warrior not look out of place in a Devon garden?" His response, "Half the plants you have in your garden come from China." Now, an early influence on the Arboretum at Chevithorne was Michael Hickson, the head gardener at Knightshays. Michael helped Michael finance an expedition to Mexico in 1994. And this produced a number of Mexican oaks, which started the Mexican collection. The first nursery that Michael bought from was Hilliers, and then from James Harris Mallet Court Nurseries, then a succession of nurseries, including Burn Coos, Susan Cooper, Dulford, Junkers, Pavia, and Nick Mesa Pango Plants, and Boma. Michael met Alan Coombs at around 1994, and this was his downfall. What had been a happy hobby transformed into an obsession. Michael's collection could not exist without the incredible support of so many people. And to name a few of them, Tony Kirkham would be included, obviously. There's a list there. And Christine Battle was an incredible help. And so many people have given to the collection to make it something special. Funding expeditions. Michael also backed and did fund a number of expeditions. He and Michael Heseltine were the core funders expeditions to Taiwan, Vietnam, China, and America. Now, the wonderful thing about the two of them, they were so competitive that when one of them invested in an expedition, the other had to. And so these, and so the Oak Collection Group was founded 20 odd years ago. And since 1915, I took it over from Christine. And these are some of the major sponsors that were behind the collection. There were others. They're not unsubstantial in cost. Now looking forward, this is where Greg's going to take over in a second, but I'll say Michael sadly died in 2016, and Ed and Alice Amory inherited the estate. They're committed to maintaining and expanding the oak collection with new treasures in the future, but also adding to the garden's different collections of different genera. It is an exciting future.
So I'm going to talk about and summarise basically the aims and the mission statement for taking the garden forward with both Ed and Alice. But firstly, I'll go over what the collection is today. So we have around 220 species within the collection, 114 cultivars, and around 398 taxa overall, with about 600 specimen trees growing outside within the garden. Which can be a lot to handle and look after. So we need to obviously keep track of that. So we use IRIS-BG as our database, and our label systems link up with this. So on the left here, we have one of our labels on Quercus salicina. So we use an accession sort of record. So it'll be the year where the seed or the plant itself came in, and then the number of the plant or seed that year. The top right is the collection code if it was well collected, bottom right describing if it is well collected, and then where the tree comes from. The mapping system is quite basic at the moment. We use hand-drawn maps, but we're looking to implement that into a digital mapping system soon. We could possibly use what 3 words, but we want it to be a wee bit more precise because a lot of the oaks are quite close together. So the mission statement for moving forward is to seamlessly merge Ed's great-grandmother's plant swimming garden of an interesting shrubs and herbaceous plants with Michael's passion of oaks, all while maintaining the feel of a natural, healthy landscape that can be enjoyed by visitors of all kinds. And then secondly, to both grow and maintain the current Quercus collection so that it can be used for both education and conservation. So growing the collection via propagation, we do this by seed cuttings and air layering. So propagating by seed is often hard these days because of international policies and protocols putting up barriers for collections like ours. So whenever we do grow seed, it tends to come from our garden itself. Obviously, we're not going to know if it's going to come true because of how promiscuous oaks can be, obviously. So if we can basically take any interesting sort of hybrids or forms that come out of this. Here's a few pictures of me. I've put a mesh around a Quercus gavifolia acorn just because, I mean, the squirrels take them all if you don't do that. We have a really cool Robert Argentum Argentina, that's it, yeah. And I can't say the middle one, but it's Quercus vilmorioniana, is it?
Vilmorioniana.
Yeah, I really struggle with that. But yeah, we had loads of acorns this year. It was amazing. So we spread them out between friends. So the next and the most important is cuttings. So we've been trialing cuttings for a few years now. And we basically try and focus on the red list. So we have around 20 species that are endangered in the garden, and so far the team has successfully rooted these trees. So Agrifolia, Cambii, Cygnus, Oxyodon, Sagriana, Salicina, Utilis, and Ixoris. It's a bit of a trial and error with the cuttings. I've not quite got it down. It seems to be the evergreens that root better. So I've not tried hardwood cuttings yet, but I'm going to give that a go this coming winter. And my most recent sort of venture is air layering. I don't have a lot of experience in this. I took inspiration from the conservation efforts for the Quercus marlipoensis that I read an article on. So if anyone has any information on that, drop me a line. I'd love to learn more about it, but here's me giving it a go on Quercus lamellosa this year. So I'm going to move on to sort of maintaining the collection briefly, not going into too much detail, but you'd be surprised that we have quite a lot of oak leaves at the National Oak Collection. So I've been trying to sort of harness this sort of resource that we have. And so where possible, we try and leave the leaves underneath the trees, like you can see up here in the top left. I would try and direct them under trees, like in the middle photo of Quercus lamellosa. But in the more formal areas, we need to pick these leaves up. So I like to try and say that we're harvesting them. So I'll let them sort of rot for a year, and then I take them back and use them on our younger oaks that we're planting. So here on the left is a picture of me holding that mulch, which, I mean, it is brilliant. I mean, it breaks down enough that there's still structure there. And here it is in a cage with Lithocarpus deobatus, I think it is. And so basically, sorry, I'll finish off there. Basically, it's to reduce the weeds, retain the moisture where possible because of the drier summers that we're tending to have, and also increase that sort of microbial environment with increasing more beneficial fungus towards these young oaks. So the younger oaks obviously benefit from this, but at some point we need to leave older trees to their own devices. So we still worry slightly about our changing climate. We're lucky to have streams flowing through the garden, like you can see here, watercourses and streams. So we have a natural stream flowing through the arboretum there on the left. Then through the garden, we have a man-made leat for an old mill that sort of keeps the water table higher. But we're also taking other precautions for this. So we're starting to leave sort of grassland and meadows and cutting paths through the arboretum. So this is acting as sort of a natural mulch in a sense. Because, I mean, if you take the temperature of the cut path or a lawn, it's way higher and dries out much quicker than that of the longer grass. So that's something that we could use as a resource that we don't really have to do too much to. It doesn't work as well with the younger oaks, hence why I'm using the mulch, because it would outcompete for resources. But the older trees seem to fare okay with this. So finally, we'd like to talk about is the education that we're trying to push. So we're trying to host more and more oak study days with IDS and iOS. So here on the left is Roderick being an absolute superstar with his last presentation, which was a brilliant day where we had tours and presentations throughout. And then I also try and set up these tables on the right for the general public on our open days, to sort of try to compress the collection and show the diversity through leaf morphology, basically, across species, to try and get it into people's head that there's not just a few oaks, there's over 450 or so. And also, we're trying to encourage students to come to the garden and host and do studies, basically, for dissertations and masters and so on. The last person that came did a study on Lithocarpus, drought tolerance and frost tolerance. So it'd be good to encourage that and learn more data from the trees that we have growing at Chevithorne. So now we're going to go on to sort of displaying the diversity we have in the collection. We'd love to go into more detail about the trees, and that could maybe be another presentation in itself, but we thought we'd split it across all the sections that we grow at the garden. So first is a section Quercus. So obviously within the collection, we have native trees, native roburs growing in the hedgerows round about the fields and then within the garden itself. And the ages vary, but there's a lot of veteran trees within the garden. This is Quercus dentata that we have. We have two straight species, a few cultivars like Carofelis Miller and Sir Harold Hillier, but on the right here is our largest tree, which is the dentata. It's quite hard to get a picture of, but it shows how healthy it is with the foliage there. In the middle is one we have in the rifle range, which tends to show quite consistent autumn colour, which is quite interesting. And then it goes into that marquescent state where it keeps the leaves throughout the year. And then there's a picture of some fresh growth on the left. And then in contrast to that, we have Quercus intricata with the tiny leaves. And we didn't know for a while that it obviously layers. I mean, we do now underneath the soil. So our grass cutter would be going over this for years. And it wasn't until he got ill that we realised all these suckers coming up and the tree starting to expand and look healthy. So now we're aware of this, and we're going to try and probably propagate these suckers if possible. I've tried to lift them out of the ground, but they don't seem to do very well. So maybe cutting them in the ground and letting them root might be the way forward. We're going to move on to the red oaks now.
Now, here's the years vary completely. It's very lucky to be talking about red oaks because they do so much better with us than white oaks. So you've got a Quercus rubra and a Quercus coccinea, and their red oaks do very well with us. Quercus affinis grows startling well with us, and in fact so fast that at one point we wondered whether enough root would actually sustain it. And we've got the one on the right is one of the champion trees. Quercus delduana is a very successful tree with us. This is an extraordinary thing because the story behind this is I received a packet of seeds from a friend from the Sierra Gorda, and it said Axolti on it. And it turned out that he collected them in a site where he was looking for axolotls. He was a most extraordinary man, and he founded the World Land Trust. He was part of the founding of Traffic and CITES. And sadly, he died a couple of years ago, and his ashes were scattered in a park in Armenia. And in the park, the owners of the buffer area are planting a 10,000 oak trees, to commemorate him. Quercus mexicana. This is a phenomena that we need to talk to Alan Coombs more about. It appears with Pachydermatous bark. He told Greg that it stays on longer with Mexican oaks in our environment in the UK than it does in Mexico. Anyway, that's just an example of it.
We're not sure if it's to do with the extra moisture maybe coming up and it's growing faster, I don't know. But if anyone knows anything about the bubbly Pachydermatous bark, please let us know, because I'd like to know more about it, basically.
Well, this is an astonishingly successful oak with us, the Crescifolia, and it's quite beautiful. One of the problems with it is it appears the great one at Kew and the great one at Cairhays, they've died after about 100 years. So maybe it grows too well. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
So we'll move on to section ceres. So here's just a picture of a Quercus ceres in the garden. It's not an old tree, maybe 25 to 30 years old. They grow so fast in the south of the UK. Basically like weeds. Down the road at Knightshays, there's a ceres. I don't know the age, but it's I think it's got a girth of 7.5 meters or something, and it's extremely tall. You feel minute underneath it. Here is Quercus luke that we have, which is on the endangered list here, and it grows really well. I've tried to take some cuttings off it, but no success yet. But it's a healthy tree here at Chevithorne. Here is one of our best section ceres trees, Quercus trojana. We have 3 really good trees about the same size, 12-15 meters tall, grown in multiple locations, and it's producing fruit most years as well. It's a really good tree, and it's completely marquescent as well. So I don't have a photo of it, but it keeps its brown leaves throughout the winter, and the sun shines on it, and it's absolutely fantastic. And then Quercus acutissima is another one that shoots off with us. I mean, it's a big tree, but this photo here sort of shows the madman of Michael Heathcote Amory sort of planting oaks wherever, and I find it quite romantic where these formal gardens of borders are framed by these big oaks now. It's really cool. So move on to section islets.
Now, the photograph you saw before, which we'll come to, but Guyvifolia grows so fast with us, maybe a meter plus each year, and it looks absolutely stunningly beautiful. It had some seed about 6-7 years ago that we managed to grow from, and so we've got plants, 2 plants next to this one, and Greg has managed to put these metal cages to stop the squirrels get the few that we had last time. But it seems this is a really, really important introduction and a very important tree to us. Quercus acrifolioides. This is a very special one to me because a friend who brought it back from Tibet, well, China, from 3,550 meters. And she herself was held hostage at one point. And, you know, it's not always easy collecting or going to remote areas. In fact, sidetracking to another plant hunter friend called Tom Hart Dyke, he was kidnapped by the Colombians for 9 months, and he drove them so mad by talking about plants, and he and his partner, that eventually he escaped. But the problem with that is that he got lost, and he and his friend Paul Winther then eventually found their way back to the camp where they'd been escaped from, much to the horror of their captives, who then pointed the way they should disappear. Quercus balut. This is a special thing for us because it's such an extraordinary spiny monster. This came from Sean Haddock. And what is interesting is that where it's collected in a lower region, it's spinels.
So I made a wee bit of a mistake here. Marlipoensis in section ilex, I think, is what it is. But we've just been in ilex, so we'll carry that through. So we have Quercus marlipoensis growing at the garden, and it's still fairly small. We cover it every year. I haven't managed to take any cuttings from it, but our friend Tom Hudson has managed to do that. I think this might actually be cutting.
This is a cutting from Tom Hudson, and just one thing is that he successfully, when it was young, could take cuttings. Now it's more mature, and its height is 15 feet or so. The cuttings he takes don't take.
Yeah, general rule for cuttings, I mean, after the first 6-7 years, tends to be really difficult to get semi-ripe cuttings anyway. So moving on to Quercus lamellosa, which is one of my favourite trees and definitely my favourite ring cup. So it doesn't, I've been told, doesn't grow very well in other gardens, but we have 2 trees doing really well. They're in a sheltered location, but I mean they're really healthy. You can see by the foliage on the left, they're really healthy tree. There's a wee bit of frost damage sometimes on the leaves, but you can just see the glaucous underside there. It's definitely one of the best lookers. And then moving on to Quercus shotkiana, which we have 3 trees in the garden that grow quite well, but this is definitely the best. Both of these photos are from this morning actually. So that's James next to shotkiana, and the new catkins just on it there. The new growth is brilliant. So what ends up happening, it is evergreen, but the top loses its green foliage in the winter before this new red flush, which in person can actually look really nice. So Quercus salicina is another good Cyclobelenopsis we have. This is almost like a big dome, this one in the garden. And the picture doesn't really do it justice, but it's really wide. It's almost as wide as it is tall. And yeah, a really good doer, that one.
Well, we have Pontica and Sadleriana, but this is one of our special trees. It's growing incredibly well. It's doing its typical multi-stem thing. It's a very beautiful tree. A number of years ago, we collected some acorns from the other one in the collection, and about 20% of them came true.
So we also have some failures, or not failures, but I mean, not all trees do well with this here at Chevithorne. So we have section Virentis here with Quercus fusiformis. It's probably a little bit too cold and maybe too wet for this tree. It produces new growth every year, but I mean, it doesn't really get taller than this. I think it's a 2011 accession, which is quite poor for that age. So maybe I could move it to a better location, and if it would survive, it's something more fitting to the Texas climate or Texas conditions. But yeah.
One of the special things that we had was the champion tree of Chrysolepis, but unfortunately it's been cut down. But we've got a wonderful multi-stemmed one growing in the rifle range, which is looking really vigorous, and actually it's looking quite beautiful at the moment.
And that's us. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, Greg and James. That was fascinating. I had the pleasure of participating in the Oak Study Day, so I thought I'd be familiar with most of that, but there's a lot of great new information there for me. So thank you very much. Questions? I think, do we have something in the chat, Kate?
Yeah, we have 2 questions, maybe 2 quick questions in the chat. Do you use a rooting hormone, and if so, what concentration?
I don't tend to use a rooting hormone. So it's Tom Hudson that's sort of given me the idea for cuttings, and he doesn't use any. He goes by the phrase, if it's going to root, it's going to root. But I'd like to go down the more scientific road eventually. So I'm just the substrate I'm using is just a Cornish grit or a horticultural grit with perlite, so very free draining. And the problem we have is rotting off sitting in there. It seems to be the problem. But yeah, sorry if that doesn't answer your question. But.
Okay, yeah. Well, it wasn't my question, but it's answered it for, yeah, I think you answered it well. Is the protection you mentioned against roe deer or another pest?
What protection is that? Sorry.
This was winter protection.
Oh, yeah, so winter protection. I mean, we have the cages there. So a lot of the cages on the site are protection against sheep, first and foremost. So a lot of the fields are still arable land. But yeah, we do have some deer damage, mainly roe, occasionally red. The cages keep the roe out, but the red can usually get over in months at tops. So,
but because the collection consists of such a far range of different climates that they come from, there are a number of trees that are each year are covered up in the winter, and so we use just sort of netting to break the frost damage on them.
As they get older, though, we need to sort of try to reduce that and test them out and see what they're like. And I'd like to do that with the marlipoensis, but I don't want to be too brave.
And then last question, it looks like your database used to be available online and it no longer is. Will it be available online again?
Yeah, that's so we've switched databases from, I can't remember what the last one was called, Botanical Software or something, and it's now in Iris. So there was a problem with the old website. So something that we would like to put that information out there again, something similar to what maybe Roderick's website's a bit like. I mean, that was really good with what he has, the information of the oaks that we have.
No, when we switched to RSPG, we had serious problems. I mean, the switch came over without giving us access back into the old database, basically. And so hopefully it's going to be sorted. It's something we're very conscious about.
Yeah, it's been a long recovery from that, but I mean, we're basically on top of most of it now. So yeah.
Awesome. And then just last comment was a comment, great presentation. The garden looks beautiful. I hope to visit, and I would second that as well. So
yeah, please do. I mean, if anyone's ever over this way, just give us a shout and we'll happily show you around.
I have a question for James and Greg. I recall from my visit to Chevithorne that there seem to be like 2 types of environment where you plant the oaks. There's like the standard specimen oaks out in a field, and then you have like oak woodlands where you have quite a lot of undergrowth and you're mixing it with other plants. Have you found that one environment is more successful than the other in getting survival of your oaks? or flourishing?
The oak woodlands, definitely. I mean, they've only really been created via Michael sort of planting wherever he could. And these have come in situ. But it's becoming harder to plant in these areas now. The space is quite limited. So a lot of the space that I have to plant is out in these open fields, which get battered by wind, and especially if it's cold. So
yeah, I'm going to say, you know, for instance, the classic thing is the Quercus delgadoana. That grows well in a woodland environment, but when we've tried it in the fields, in the open spaces, it's killed it. So it's mix and match. I mean, the idea is really to try a lot of the species in different places. So you take multiple plantings of the same species and see what habitat suits them.
Great. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute.
There's one more question that popped up in the chat. How young do you plant your oaks?
Well, it was sort of trying to get a conveyor belt of either getting the plant or the seed, growing it, and trying to get it out within the first 2 to 3 years. But we're sort of trying to go for more of a height now than an age. So maybe about 1 meter high to 0.8 if we can. We just want the plant to be healthy, because especially if we're planting into fields, open environments, you want them to have a little bit more vigor about them before they go into that environment.
It's an interesting one that Greg's, for instance, one tree that we were growing is Quercus serifolia, and I held it back from being planted out because I thought that's such an important tree. And speaking to Beatrice, she said, no, get it out as soon as possible. Mine's grown probably 5 times the size as yours by planting it out at small. So it's, well, never quite, you know, whatever you do is going to be wrong.
Also, I'd quite like to maybe retry, I was just at Westborough Arboretum and I saw the woodland nursery areas they have. And I'd quite like to try in that, like sort of an area that could come out of the glasshouse polytunnel into maybe a more sheltered place before it goes into its final resting place, to see how it does in a more open environment. That might be quite difficult with the tap roots on oaks, to relift it again from the ground, but it's something I'm willing to try potentially.
Great. Well, thank you. If there are no further questions, that would conclude an excellent presentation. Before we close the webinar, we'd like to open it up to the floor. If anyone has any general feedback about what the IIS is doing or what we should be doing. Just before we start on that, just a general meditation on these webinars. I think it's fantastic the way we were able to connect people from all over the world. If we think back to our roots as a society, we began exchanging acorns and envelopes. We now have people, aside from presentations from Yunnan in China and Devon in the UK, I'm just looking at participants. I think we have participants from Argentina, from California, from several countries in Europe, Czech Republic, Sweden, Mexico as well. It's really exciting to see this. But if anyone has any comments or general feedback, please speak up now. Okay, I think everyone was dumbfounded by those great presentations. Okay, well, I think we can conclude it then. Thanks very much again to Luting, Dr. Deng, Greg Watson, James MacEwen. Really appreciate the efforts you put in these presentations. Thanks, Kate, for helping us with the questions. And please keep your eyes open or your inboxes open for news of our next webinar. We're trying to do these every 3 months, so we'll definitely inform you about them. Thank you very much, and see you at the next one. Bye now.